In the car today with the family.
Are you filming me?
Yes. This week's VLR is about a subject very close to my heart. They're called books, and some of you may have read them. Anyway, cue the metal! At first it's impossible to tell which of the passengers around me will be getting off at the airport. Then I start to spot the vast suitcases, and as we get closer, people begin to fidget. I see them biting their nails while staring anxiously at the list of stations that shunt across the dot matrix screen. The business travellers come into focus at the same time. They reveal themselves with a sudden flurry of phone calls. They talk with bravado of their high-flying trip, lured into grandiose portrayal of what will surely be a tedious sales conference in a business park near a provincial airport. I used to have a real thing about having to own physical copies of books because I thought and felt that they were tangible history and tangible knowledge, so you could kind of never... They were a thing. You could never destroy them or lose them, or you could destroy and lose them, but they were a thing you could hold and you could pass on, and they were physical and visceral and something that you could learn from. But as I have moved on with my life, and I've realised that it's not always about the collecting of things that's important, I have allowed them to be a lot more ephemeral now, and I read a lot more because of it. What follows is an attempt to map the overlapping territories intimated by the phrases meaningful work and self-reliance. Both ideals are tied to a struggle for individual agency, which I find to be at the very centre of modern life. When we view our lives through the lens of this struggle, it brings certain experiences into sharper focus. Both as workers and as consumers, we feel we move in channels that have been projected from afar by vast impersonal forces. We worry that we are becoming stupider, and begin to wonder if getting an adequate grasp on the world intellectually depends on getting a handle on it in some literal and active sense. I was vehemently opposed to kindles and other such e-reader type things. However, when I went travelling, I realised that carrying books with you, other than the 3 books that I took with me for sort of personal reasons, was actually a really annoying way to read. I didn't even have a Kindle because I lost it on my first flight. So I ended up just reading with the Kindle app on my phone, and that to me was a revelation. It's also been very expensive. If the Kindle books that were on my Kindle reader on my phone were stacked up, they'd probably be as tall as me. But fair play to Amazon for making it so easy to get a good book recommendation and then to buy it. There's nothing better than having an afternoon of nothing to do and just sitting and knowing you can read. Flights are the same. Going on a plane, brilliant. Excellent time for reading. 3 books I took with me. They were very important to, I think, to the person I ended up becoming. All stories begin with once upon a time. And that's just what this story is all about. What happened once upon a time. Once you were so small that even standing on tiptoes, you could barely reach your mother's hand. Do you remember? Your own history might begin like this. Once upon a time there was a small boy, or a small girl, and that small boy was me. But before that you were a baby in a cradle. You won't remember that, but you know it's true. Your father and mother were also small once, and so was your grandfather and your grandmother. A much longer time ago, but you know that too. After all, we say, they are old. But they too had grandfathers and grandmothers, and they too could say, once upon a time. And so it goes on, further and further back. Behind every once upon a time there is always another. Have you ever tried standing between 2 mirrors? You should. You will see a great long line of shiny mirrors, each one smaller than the one before, stretching away into the distance, getting fainter and fainter, so that you never see the last. But even when you can't see them anymore, the mirrors still go on. They are there, and you know it. One of them I've already talked about on the Neistat video, but it's this, which is the case for working with your hands, or why office work is bad for us and fixing things feel good, by Matthew Crawford. You can see how much travelled it is, but how yellow the pages are. There are some similarities between this and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, if you've read that. It's a great book. And what's great about this book is it was the first book that gave me permission to actually not be happy working in an office, or permission to be happy creating things outside of in the office. Book 2, The Idle Traveller. Now, I had read this before I actually went travelling, by Dan Kieran. And the foreword is by a guy called Tom Hodgkinson, who, if you look him up, he has a magazine called The Idler. It's a good book about slowing down and not just spending 2 weeks in Greece on a resort without going and actually experiencing where you are. The last book, E.H. Gombrich, I think that's how you say his name, A Little History of the World. Now, this book is great. It tries to tell the story of the world from the beginning to the end, but what is good is it links up things that are happening on different continents. So if the Aztecs are doing something in South America, it says what's going on in Europe. It was originally started as a kids book, and he was trying to write a history for children. I am a history graduate, postgraduate in classical history, and this, for me, really was such an easy way to put the whole world into context and understand how the Byzantines were connected to the Romans, and how the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages in Europe all led from the end of Rome, and how that fed from Carthage. And it's just an incredible book. I highly advise it. So these are the 3 books that I took with me to start my new life. Now I'm married and have 2 children, and all of this lovely space. So yes, books are important.